You weren't born to survive your life. You weren't made to wake up, go through the motions, check the boxes, keep the peace, and call it a day. You were built for something deeper, for something richer. You were made to feel alive, not just on the weekends, not just on vacation, but in the life you wake up to every single day. But somewhere along the way, most people forget that. They start to settle. They stop dreaming. They trade meaning for safety. They start to believe that maybe fulfillment is for someone else, that maybe love, joy, alignment, passion, peace are luxuries they weren't meant to have. And it's not because they gave up all at once. It's because they stopped choosing. They stopped choosing joy. They stopped choosing challenge. They stopped choosing themselves. And when you stop choosing, you start existing. You start reacting. You start waiting. But life doesn't change when you wait. It changes when you decide. When you draw the line and say, I want more than just a good enough life. Not more stuff. Not more distractions. More alignment. More truth. More meaning. A life you actually want to be in. A life you don't have to escape from. The kind of life you love doesn't come from luck. It doesn't come from waiting for someone to hand you the answer. It comes from building, from unlearning, from risking, from shifting, from choosing values over validation, from choosing presence over perfection, from choosing now over never. And you build it one decision at a time, one standard at a time, one aligned action at a time. You build it by saying no to what's convenient when it's not true, by saying yes to what scares you when it's in alignment with who you want to become. A life you love isn't easy. It's earned. And it's earned through courage, through clarity, through commitment, through coming back to yourself over and over again, even when the world tries to pull you into something you never agreed to. This is your permission slip, not to become someone new, but to return to the version of you that's been buried under shoulds, under timelines, under guilt, under fear. The version of you that knows what lights you up, the one that still has fire. Because it's not too late. You haven't missed it, and you're not too far gone. What you want still matters. Who you are still matters. And this moment, right here, right now, it's not the end of your story. It's the turning point. So what comes next? What does it look like to actually build a life you love? Not just talk about it, not just journal about it, but to take real steps, to live with intention, to create something that reflects your values, not your fears, something that feels like home. The first lesson to build a life you love is to stop outsourcing your fulfillment. Because as long as you place the responsibility for your happiness, your peace, or your worth in someone else's hands, you'll always be chasing, always waiting, always dependent on something you can't control. Most people were taught, directly or indirectly, that happiness comes from outside, that it comes from approval, from relationships, from status, from recognition, from money. And so they chase. They chase achievement, hoping it'll make them feel whole. They chase connection, hoping it'll make them feel seen. And then one day, they get the thing, the title, the house, the relationship, the recognition, and something feels off. Something's still missing because they thought the external win would fix the internal ache, but it never does. Fulfillment is an inside job. It's built, not bought. It's grown, not gifted. You don't find it in things. You find it in how you live. You find it in the way you show up for yourself, in the values you honor, in the energy you protect, in the boundaries you keep. You don't get there by waiting for the world to give you permission. You don't get there by waiting for someone else to choose you. You get there by choosing yourself, by deciding that your life will not be an audition, that your happiness will not be on loan to other people's opinions. And this is hard because it means you have to stop blaming. It means you have to stop making your joy someone else's job. It means you have to stop waiting for the apology, the opportunity, the recognition, the perfect conditions. It means you start taking inventory. What am I expecting someone else to give me that I haven't given myself? What am I hoping someone else will say that I haven't spoken to myself? What need am I trying to fill from the outside that's actually an inside job? You stop outsourcing love and start practicing it. You stop outsourcing peace and start protecting it. You stop outsourcing worth and start owning it. Because no matter what anyone else does, you are with you every day, every conversation, every decision, every quiet moment. And when you build that foundation, when you stop needing to be chosen to feel worthy, stop needing to be praised to feel proud, stop needing to be rescued to feel safe, you become powerful. You become steady. You become free. That freedom, it's not loud. It's not flashy. It's calm. It's quiet. It's the knowing that you've got your own back, that you can hold space for your own emotion, that you can validate your own decisions, that you can fill your own cup before pouring into others. And when you live from that space, everything shifts. Your relationships change because you're not showing up from lack. You're not trying to be completed. You're contributing from wholeness. You're not trying to be fixed. You're building something. And that kind of presence, that kind of alignment, it makes you magnetic. People feel it. They feel the peace. They feel the strength. They feel the difference between someone who's performing and someone who's rooted. But none of that happens if you keep waiting. If you keep hoping life will feel different when they finally see you, love you, choose you. You have to see you now. You have to love you now. You have to choose you now. Because fulfillment doesn't show up all at once. It grows in moments, in micro decisions, in daily habits, in the way you speak to yourself when things go wrong, in the way you move your body, in the way you nourish your mind, in the way you walk away from what drains you, even when it's familiar. And you don't need to be perfect. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to stop handing your joy to people who weren't designed to carry it. You just need to bring it back to yourself, one breath at a time, one choice at a time. This is how you begin. You reclaim the pen. You stop blaming the past. You stop waiting on people. You stop seeking from the outside what can only be built inside. And you start with compassion, with grace, with responsibility, with truth. Next, the second lesson to build a life you love is to live by your values, not your emotions. Because emotions will change by the hour, but values, if you've taken the time to define them, can anchor you when everything else feels unstable. Most people live reactionary lives. They move based on how they feel. If they're motivated, they act. If they're tired, they shut down. If they're afraid, they run. If they're excited, they overcommit. Their entire direction is dictated by temporary internal states. But emotion is not a compass. It's a signal. It can be useful. It can point out what matters. But it's not meant to run your life, because feelings don't always tell you the truth. They tell you your interpretation. And If you live by emotion alone, you'll keep building and tearing down your progress in cycles. Values, though. Values don't shift. At least not on their own. Values are chosen, defined, reinforced. They are the principles you decide to live by even when they're inconvenient, especially when they're inconvenient. And if you want to build a life that feels like it belongs to you, not one that was handed to you by default, you need to know your values, not vague words like honesty or hard work, but deeply personal, intentional definitions of what matters most, what you will fight for, what you will sacrifice for, what you will not compromise. When you live by values, you become consistent, not because you always feel like it, but because you've already decided. You don't need to get hyped. You don't need to be in the mood. You just act. You show up. You choose in alignment with your principles. And that alignment, it creates peace. Because now you're not questioning everything. You're not wondering what to do every time things get hard. You already know. You've already decided. The value leads. The emotion follows. You start to ask better questions. What would someone with my values choose right now? What would discipline do? What does my future need from me? And those questions, they pull you out of the emotional spiral and back into purpose. This isn't about suppressing how you feel. It's about integrating it, about noticing it without letting it own you, about using it to understand, not to control, about making space for emotion, but choosing your behavior from a higher place. Because there will be days when you feel like quitting, when you feel like disappearing, when you feel like giving in to the easy thing. And if you haven't built the muscle of values first living, those days will define you. They'll direct you. But if your foundation is strong, you'll still act. You'll still honor the habit. You'll still speak the truth. You'll still follow through. Not because it's easy, but because it's aligned, because it's who you've chosen to be. This is how you build trust with yourself. You stop being unpredictable. You stop self-sabotaging. You stop starting over. You start to feel solid. Not perfect, but solid. Because you're no longer at the mercy of the moment. You're being led by your deeper truth. And over time, that kind of consistency becomes identity. You become someone who shows up, someone who does the hard thing, someone who is dependable, not just for others, but for yourself. And that changes everything. You can't love a life that's inconsistent with your values. It will always feel off, no matter how shiny it looks, no matter how impressive it sounds. If it doesn't reflect your truth, it will drain you, slowly, quietly, and eventually you'll either burn out or walk away from something you spent years building. So don't just chase goals. Define your values first. Then let those values decide your goals, your relationships, your schedule, your habits, your boundaries, your yes, your number. Because a life built on values, it doesn't just look good. It feels right. It feels clean. It feels honest, even when it's hard, even when it costs you, because you know you're in alignment. You know you're building something real. Next, the third lesson to build a life you love is to honor your pace, but stay committed to your process. Because everyone moves at a different speed. Everyone grows at their own rate. But the key is not how fast you go. It's whether or not you keep going. You live in a world that worships urgency, that celebrates fast results, that tells you if you're not winning big by 25, you're behind. That if you're not scaling quickly, gaining followers, making six figures, you're failing. But that's a lie. The truth is, speed means nothing if it's pointed in the wrong direction. Fast doesn't matter if it's not aligned. Movement is only progress when it's rooted in purpose. And sometimes the most meaningful growth is the slowest. The kind you don't notice at first, the kind that's happening deep inside. So stop comparing your chapter 3 to someone else's chapter 20. Stop letting timelines steal your peace. Stop letting someone else's breakthrough make you feel like your process is broken. It's not. You're just in your season. And your season is sacred. Some people start fast and flame out. Others start quiet and steady and build something that lasts. Don't envy the noise. Build something with roots, with depth, with integrity. Something that feels good on the inside, not just looks good from the outside. Your job isn't to move fast. It's to move honestly, to keep showing up, to stay in the process even when it's boring, even when it's slow, even when nothing seems to be changing. Because that's when the real shift is happening. Not in what people can see, but in what you're becoming. You don't need to explain your pace to anyone. You don't need to defend your timeline. What matters is that you're consistent, that you're showing up with intention, that you're being faithful to the process, even when the results are taking their time. And yes, it will be tempting to rush, to skip steps, to compromise your standards just to speed things up. But shortcuts often cut off the very foundation you need. You don't need faster. You need deeper. You need stronger. You need rooted. The world is full of people who got there quickly and couldn't stay there because they built too fast to build well, because they didn't take the time to become the kind of person who could carry the weight of what they asked for. Don't be that. Don't chase the spotlight at the expense of your soul. Honor your process. Trust your timing. Know that every step matters, even the slow ones, even the ones that feel like setbacks, even the ones that make you question if it's working. Because as long as you're moving, you're building. As long as you're trying, you're growing. Progress doesn't always look like progress. Sometimes it looks like rest. Sometimes it looks like regrouping. Sometimes it looks like saying no. Sometimes it looks like rebuilding something you rushed through the first time. And that's okay. Just don't stop. Don't let your pace become your excuse. Don't let your delay become your identity. Don't let the fact that it's taking time convince you that it's not worth it. It is. You are. And as long as you stay in the work, the results will come. And not just any results, the right ones, the ones that match your values, the ones that feel right in your body, the ones that allow you to breathe deep at night, knowing you didn't cheat your way into a version of life that doesn't feel like home. So you breathe, you trust, you keep going. You remind yourself that pace is personal, that progress is not always linear, that sometimes you grow more in the slow seasons than you ever did in the fast ones, and that your process, your honest, intentional, disciplined process is what will carry you where you're meant to go. Next, the fourth lesson to build a life you love is to learn how to honor your boundaries. Because a life without boundaries isn't freedom. It's fatigue. It's burnout. It's resentment dressed up as responsibility. And you can't build something beautiful when you're constantly betraying yourself to make everyone else comfortable. Boundaries aren't walls, they're bridges. They don't keep people out. They teach people where the edges are. They say, here's where I begin and here's where I end. They create clarity. They create safety. They create space for connection that doesn't require self-abandonment. But for most people, boundaries feel selfish. They feel guilty for saying no. They feel guilty for protecting their peace. They feel like if they don't give everything away, they're not kind enough. But kindness without clarity is chaos. And love without limits leads to resentment. If you're always the one bending, always the one sacrificing, always the one adjusting, eventually you forget what your life is supposed to feel like. You lose track of your own rhythm because you've spent so long dancing to everyone else's. But you can't build a life you love if that life is built on obligation, fear, guilt, and people-pleasing. You need boundaries with your time, with your energy, with your phone, with your calendar, with the kind of conversations you'll entertain. The way you allow people to speak to you. And boundaries don't need to be aggressive. They don't need to be dramatic. They need to be consistent. They need to be communicated. They need to be aligned with your values. You don't set boundaries to push people away. You set them to protect what matters. What matters to you? Your sleep, your peace, your purpose, your mental health, your family, your integrity. If you're letting all of those things take a back seat so you can keep everyone happy, you're not serving them. You're sacrificing you. And over time, that sacrifice doesn't make you more loving. It makes you more exhausted. It makes you bitter. And bitterness has a way of leaking out in your tone, in your silence, in your passive-aggressive comments, in your fatigue. But when you start honoring your boundaries, something powerful happens. You start breathing again. You start creating again. You start saying no without explanation. You start saying yes with intention. You stop apologizing for needing space. You stop shrinking to fit into schedules that suffocate your soul. Boundaries are not rejection. They are direction. They point your energy toward what matters most. They protect your creativity. They protect your focus. They protect your identity. Because without boundaries, your vision gets blurry. You're not here to be available for everyone all the time at the cost of your peace. You're not here to explain every decision to people who haven't done your healing. You're not here to overextend so that others don't have to face their own discomfort. You're here to be clear, to be rooted, to be intentional. And boundaries are what make that possible. They are the pause between your impulse and your instinct, the reminder that you are allowed to protect your life from things that drain it. And yes, some people will be uncomfortable when you set boundaries, especially if they benefited from you not having them. But their discomfort isn't your signal to back off. It's their opportunity to grow. It's their chance to learn what your new standard looks like. And if they can't respect that, if they only loved you when you were convenient, that's not a loss. That's clarity. Because a life you love cannot be built on unstable agreements. It cannot be built on people who only value you when you're useful. So be kind, be clear, and hold the line, even when it's hard, even when you want to go back, even when your voice shakes, because every time you honor your boundaries, you teach your nervous system that you are safe. You teach your mind that you matter. You remind your heart that you're worth protecting. Okay. Now, the fifth lesson to build a life you love is to focus on alignment over achievement. Because achievement without alignment will leave you looking successful and feeling empty. It'll have you chasing goals that don't belong to you, living lives you didn't choose, wearing titles that don't fit. We live in a world that worships achievement. numbers, recognition, milestones. But none of those things mean anything if you're miserable getting there. None of those things will satisfy you if you abandon yourself on the way. People spend years climbing ladders only to realize it was leaning against the wrong wall. They spend decades chasing goals that were handed to them by parents, by teachers, by culture. And when they finally arrive, they wonder why they don't feel anything. Achievement feels good in the moment, but alignment feels right for a lifetime. And a life you love is built by choosing alignment again and again. It's built by asking not just, what can I do, but what feels right in my spirit. Not just, what's the next step, but what step matches who I'm becoming. Alignment doesn't mean you don't work hard. It means your work is rooted in purpose. It means your goals are connected to your values. It means your energy is moving in the same direction as your peace. And alignment requires honesty. It requires checking in with yourself. It requires asking, do I even want this? Is this mine? Or am I just doing what I think I'm supposed to do? Because if you're doing it for applause, for safety, for someone else's approval, you'll always be disconnected. But when you're aligned, you can go slower and feel more fulfilled. You can do less and feel more peace. You can stop chasing and start creating. Because now, your life isn't based on someone else's checklist. It's based on your truth. And that truth will challenge you. It will ask you to walk away from what's shiny. It will ask you to leave good things to make room for great ones. It will ask you to trust yourself before you have all the proof. But if you follow it, if you stay aligned, you'll build something that feels like home. You'll wake up with peace, not panic. You'll move with clarity, not comparison. You'll stop needing to prove and start learning to enjoy. So how do you know if something's aligned? You check your body, your energy, your inner knowing. You ask yourself, am I at peace here, even when it's hard? Am I growing here, even if it's slow? Am I becoming more myself, not less? Because alignment isn't about easy. It's about accurate. It's not about perfect conditions. It's about the right direction. It's about choosing what feels true, not what looks good. And when you build a life around alignment, you stop living in anxiety. You stop chasing results that never fill you. You stop performing for people who don't know your story. You start moving differently, more grounded, more present, more whole. This is how you build something sustainable, something that doesn't burn you out, something that doesn't require you to constantly hustle to feel worthy, something that allows you to breathe deep while you build. Because when your life is aligned, success feels like freedom, not pressure. Growth feels like evolution, not obligation. And love, real love, feels like expansion, not performance. So you check in, you slow down, you stop asking what's next and start asking, what's real? You stop asking, what will they think? And start asking, what do I know is right for me? You stop living from the outside in and you start living from the inside out. Next, the sixth lesson to build a life you love is to stop living by default and start leading with intention. Because if you don't lead your life, something else will. Your past will lead it. Your fear will lead it. Your habits will lead it. Other people's expectations will lead it. And you'll wake up one day realizing you built a life that doesn't even feel like yours. Most people don't choose their life. They inherit it. They inherit beliefs. They inherit patterns. They inherit schedules and standards and values without ever asking, do I agree with this? Does this even fit who I am? They get caught in the flow. And that flow pulls them through years, sometimes decades, before they even realize they've never paused long enough to ask the most important question: what do I actually want? Not what sounds impressive, not what's safe, not what's familiar. What do I want? What do I value? What would my life look like if I actually designed it instead of just reacting to it? Intention means you stop living on autopilot. You stop making choices out of momentum and start making them out of clarity. You stop filling your calendar by accident and start filling it on purpose. You decide how your morning starts. You decide what conversations you engage in. You decide what gets your energy and what doesn't. You decide who you're becoming, and then you reverse engineer your actions to match. That kind of life, it doesn't just happen. It's built slowly, thoughtfully, not with perfection, but with consistency. It requires awareness. It requires courage. It requires slowing down long enough to think before you move. Most people are addicted to motion. They're moving fast, always busy, always reactive. But motion without intention is chaos. Activity without alignment is distraction. You can work hard every day and still wake up unsatisfied if your effort isn't pointed at what matters. So you pause, you listen, you create space to ask, what matters to me? Where am I going? What is this season of life asking from me? And then you build around that. You don't try to do everything. You don't say yes out of guilt. You don't sacrifice your peace for someone else's urgency. You get strategic. You prioritize. You say no, not because you're cold, but because you're clear. And your clarity becomes your filter. It protects your energy. It focuses your mind. It strengthens your pace. And here's the truth. An intentional life doesn't look like everyone else's. It's not built for likes. It's not built to impress your old friends. It's built to reflect your values, your purpose, your alignment. It might be quieter, it might be slower, but it will feel like home. When you live this way, you stop comparing. You stop needing constant validation. You stop chasing timelines that weren't designed for you because you're not following the crowd. You're following your own compass. That's freedom. That's power. That's ownership. And it doesn't happen overnight. It's something you recommit to every day. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to keep asking, is this aligned? Is this me? Is this the life I want to keep building? And when the answer is no, you adjust. You course correct. You don't judge yourself. You just come back to intention, back to truth, back to what matters. Because every time you choose that path, you get one step closer to a life that fits your soul. The seventh lesson to build a life you love is to forgive the past so you can lead your future. Because you can't carry bitterness and vision in the same heart. You can't build something new while dragging the weight of what hurt you. At some point, you have to let go. Not because it didn't matter, but because it no longer defines you. Everyone has a story. Everyone has been hurt, betrayed, disappointed, overlooked. And it's easy to let that pain become identity, to let those wounds become your filter, to build a life that looks forward but lives in reverse. But you weren't built to live in rewind. You were built to rise. And rising doesn't mean forgetting. It means healing. It means facing what happened with honesty and courage and then choosing intentionally not to let it lead you anymore. Because pain is a powerful teacher, but it's a terrible driver. And if you let it run your life, it will limit everything. It will shrink your capacity. It will harden your heart. It will convince you to avoid what you were made to engage with. Forgiveness is not approval. It's not agreement. It's not weakness. It's not saying what happened was okay. Forgiveness is freedom. It's choosing to release the grip the past has on your power. It's choosing to reclaim your focus. Because as long as you're holding on to that resentment, that anger, that betrayal, you're spending energy you could be using to build. And when your life feels heavy, sometimes it's not because of what's ahead of you. It's because of what you're still dragging behind you. You can't rewrite what happened, but you can rewrite what it means. You can decide that you're not going to keep replaying that moment, that that season is no longer your identity, that that story is not going to be the loudest voice in your head. This is the hardest work, but it's also the most liberating. Because once you forgive, once you release, once you stop letting that moment become your mental anchor, you start to rise again. You start to move again. You start to feel light again. And sometimes the person you need to forgive most is you, for what you allowed, for what you missed, for who you became while trying to survive. But survival mode is not your future, and beating yourself up is not healing. You don't punish your way into wholeness. You don't shame yourself into growth. You love yourself through it. You hold yourself with honesty and compassion. You look in the mirror and say, I'm not perfect, but I'm learning. I'm not stuck. I'm healing. I'm not broken. I'm rebuilding. That inner shift, it ripples. It changes how you walk into rooms, how you handle conflict, how you receive love, how you trust again. And a life you love cannot be built on a foundation of self-blame and bitterness. You have to clear the ground, and forgiveness is how you do it. You don't need a formal process. You don't need the apology. You don't need them to understand. You just need to decide, I release this. I'm done rehearsing it. I'm done letting it own my decisions. And it might not happen all at once. That's okay. It might take time. You might feel the old story come back in waves. But every time it does, you remind yourself, I'm not who I was. I'm not what I experienced. I'm not here to stay in survival. I'm here to build something beautiful. Forgiveness doesn't erase the pain. It puts you in charge of what happens next. And when you start leading from that place, when you start choosing from healing instead of hurt, your future opens up. Your vision gets clear. Your energy comes back. Because nothing drains potential like unprocessed pain. But once you process it, once you face it, once you let it go, you unlock everything you've been carrying under the surface. And that version of you, that's the one who's ready to lead. Next, the 8th lesson to build a life you love is to pursue progress, not perfection. Because perfection will lie to you. It will tell you that if it's not flawless, it's not worth starting. That if you make one mistake, you should give up. That if it's not polished, it's not valuable. And if you listen to that voice, you'll stay stuck forever. Perfection isn't a standard, it's a prison. It holds you in cycles of overthinking, of second guessing, of constant comparison. And no matter how far you climb, it will whisper, not good enough, because that's how it keeps its grip, by moving the finish line. But progress, that's different. Progress is rooted in reality. Progress knows you're a work in progress, that life is messy, that growth is not linear, that success is built in layers, and that the only way to get better is to start before you feel ready. If you want to build a life that feels like yours, you have to give yourself permission to be imperfect, to take the step even when your voice shakes, to launch before everything's polished, to say yes even while you're still learning. Because the truth is, you'll never feel completely ready. You'll never have all the answers. You'll never remove all the risk. And if you wait until you do, you'll miss every door that required faith instead of certainty. Progress means you start with what you have. You move with what you know. You build as you go. You're not trying to impress. You're trying to evolve. You're not chasing image. You're building substance. And yes, you'll make mistakes. That's part of it. That's how you learn. That's how you grow. That's how you gather data. You don't avoid error. You use it. You adjust. You keep going. Because forward is forward, even when it's messy. This mindset frees you. It takes the pressure off. You stop trying to be the best. You start trying to be better. You stop needing perfect timing. You start honoring the timing you have. You stop needing perfect words. You start speaking with honesty. And when you start living that way, you become more productive. You stop procrastinating under the weight of perfection. You stop delaying what you know you need to do. You start finishing what you start. Not because it's flawless, but because it matters. You build momentum, and momentum compounds. One imperfect action leads to another. One messy win leads to another. One decision made today unlocks clarity you wouldn't have had otherwise. But you never would have seen it if you were waiting to be perfect. That's the trap. Waiting, overthinking, redoing, refining, rewriting. Not because it needs to be better, but because you're afraid to put it into the world. Because perfection became your disguise for fear. But fear doesn't get to drive anymore. Not if you're serious about building something meaningful. You don't need perfect conditions. You don't need everyone's approval. You need to move. You need to start. You need to stop rehearsing and begin. Progress over perfection. Every time you measure your growth by your consistency, not your polish. You celebrate the effort, not the image. You track the impact, not just the aesthetics. And over time, progress builds confidence. Confidence that was earned. Confidence that's real. Confidence that comes from seeing yourself keep going even when it wasn't pretty. So stop trying to get it right on the first try. Stop trying to impress everyone. Stop letting the fear of what people might think keep you from moving toward what you already know matters. Your potential isn't waiting on perfection. It's waiting on action. It's waiting on you to trust the process, to build as you go, to make peace with the mess, and to know that every step, flawed or not, is moving you closer to the life you were made to live. Next, the 9th lesson to build a life you love is to give yourself permission to evolve. Because growth means change, and change means becoming someone you've never been before. That's not betrayal. That's transformation. And it's time to stop apologizing for it. You are not created to stay the same. You are not a fixed identity. You're a living, learning, expanding force. And the moment you stop growing to keep everyone else comfortable, you start dying a little on the inside. Too many people are carrying guilt for growing, guilt for outgrowing, for shifting, for shedding old identities, walking away from old roles, stepping outside of old expectations. But that guilt is not yours to carry. You are allowed to evolve. You are allowed to want more. You are allowed to dream differently. You are allowed to change your mind, your vision, your priorities. You are allowed to become someone new, someone more honest, more aligned, more alive. And not everyone will understand it. Some people will say, "You've changed." And they'll be right. You did. Because staying the same would have meant lying to yourself. Staying the same would have meant betraying the version of you that's been begging to breathe. So you evolve. And yes, it's uncomfortable. Because change asks you to let go of old habits, to let go of familiar patterns, to let go of roles that no longer serve you, to release relationships that were built on an older version of you. But that discomfort, it's not danger, it's development. It's the in-between space where the old you dissolves and the new you takes shape. And if you can stay in that space, if you can hold the tension, you'll step into a life that feels more like yours. This requires courage, because evolution doesn't always come with applause. In fact, it often comes with silence, with doubt, with resistance, with people asking why you're different, and you'll be tempted to shrink, to explain, to go back. But the ones who build lives they love, they keep going. They stop asking for permission. They stop over-explaining their growth. They stop living for the comfort of people who were never meant to go where they're going. This doesn't mean you abandon love. It doesn't mean you cut everyone off. It means you choose alignment over approval. It means you let your life get loud with purpose, even if it gets quiet with company. And the people who are meant to be there, they'll adjust, they'll grow too, or they'll cheer you on from where they are. But your evolution does not require universal acceptance. It only requires your commitment. You commit to becoming, to learning, to stretching, to reintroducing yourself every time you realize there's more of you to discover. You stop living under the title someone gave you 5 years ago. You stop dimming your light to match the old room. Because a life you love isn't built by staying static. It's built by becoming. And becoming is an ongoing process, one that never really ends. And that's the beauty of it. You're not chasing a final version. You're becoming more whole with every step. You don't have to know exactly who you're becoming to start. You just need to trust that your desire for more is worth listening to, that your discomfort is a signal, that your restlessness isn't wrong. It's your soul asking for room. So make the room. Give yourself permission. Release the guilt. Walk into the stretch. And trust that on the other side of change is a version of you you've been waiting to meet. One who's free. One who's rooted. One who's finally living, not just existing. Next. The 10th lesson to build a life you love is to build it with people who feel like peace, not performance. Because who you do life with is just as important as what you do with your life. You can have all the success, all the wins, all the milestones, but if you have to become someone you're not to keep the people around you, it won't last. You weren't made to live in constant audition. You weren't made to shrink for safety. You weren't made to dim to be accepted. You were made to love and be loved in truth, fully, freely, without performance, without conditions. And for that to happen, you have to choose your people wisely, not just based on history, not just based on chemistry, but based on alignment, based on integrity, based on the energy they bring into your life and the version of you they invite out. Some people love who you were, not who you're becoming. Some people are addicted to your weakness because your growth reminds them of what they've been avoiding. And if you're not careful, you'll stay small to keep them comfortable. But a life you love requires honest relationships. It requires environments where your growth is not only allowed, it's celebrated. Where your boundaries aren't seen as rejection, but as evidence of self-respect. Where your silence isn't guilted, but honored. You need people who know how to hold space, who listen without fixing, who speak truth without shame, who can see your light and your shadow and not flinch, not turn away, not disappear. You need people who remind you who you are when you forget, who hold the mirror up when you start to drift, who stay rooted when the world goes loud, people who sharpen you, not with force, but with presence. And that kind of connection, that doesn't happen by accident. It happens when you get intentional, when you stop keeping people close just because it's familiar, when you start asking better questions. Does this person see me? Do they honor my no? Do they stretch me or shame me? Do I feel safe in their presence? Or do I perform to be accepted? Do they want me, really me, or just what I can give them? Those are hard questions, but they're the ones that matter. Because who you build with will either anchor you or drain you. And the people around you will either help you rise or slowly convince you to settle. You are allowed to outgrow people. You are allowed to shift the rhythm. You are allowed to protect your peace. You are allowed to choose relationships that don't require you to abandon yourself. And the right ones, the aligned ones, they won't need you to explain your healing. They won't punish your evolution. They won't keep score when you need space. They'll know how to love you through the process, not just the polished version. So choose carefully and love boldly. And when you find your people, show up, invest, speak truth, hold grace, set boundaries, build something real. Because deep connection is one of the greatest gifts this life has to offer. And if you haven't found that yet, don't fake it. Don't settle for surface just to fill the silence. Create the space. Do your healing. Get rooted. And when the right people come, you'll know. Because they won't feel like pressure. They'll feel like home. You've made it through 10 lessons, but they're not just lessons. They're invitations. They're reminders. They're calls to action. Not to become someone else, but to return to who you've always been. Under the noise, under the pressure, under the conditioning. Because building a life you love isn't a single decision. It's a daily direction. It's not built in one moment. It's built over time, through alignment, through courage, through patience, through the willingness to choose what's honest over what's easy. And now you've got the tools. You've got the truth. You've been reminded that your peace matters, that your growth matters, that your boundaries matter, that your alignment, your pace, your voice, your joy, all of it is worth protecting. This is not the end of your journey. This is your new beginning, the one where you stop shrinking, the one where you stop performing, the one where you stop waiting for the world to approve and finally start living by your own definition of enough. You are not meant to live a life that looks good but feels empty. You are not built to check boxes you don't believe in. You are not designed to survive days that feel like they belong to someone else. You are made to thrive, to stretch, to evolve, to build. And now, you know how. You start with awareness. You choose your values. You honor your pace. You protect your boundaries. You live in alignment. You lead with intention. You forgive what you need to release. You pursue progress, not perfection. You give yourself permission to evolve. And you surround yourself with the kind of love that doesn't require performance. That is the recipe. Not for a perfect life, but for a real one. One you can be proud of. One that makes room for joy and stillness and growth and honesty. One that's deeply, unmistakably yours. You will be tested. You will be stretched. You will be misunderstood. But you will also rise. You will find your rhythm. You will walk taller. You will come home to yourself again and again and again. So go live it, not later, not after the next milestone. Now start building, start becoming, start choosing. You're not behind. You're not broken. You're right on time. And the life you love, it's not waiting for someone else to hand it to you. It's waiting for you to build it.